Hello everyone, Burb here. Today I'd like to do a little preview of the Aquarius Cup. In practice, this will be a sort of words of encouragement because I believe there's a lot of people that are frustrated with the current state of Capricorn Cup. But I think it's very temporary. And Capricorn Cup has had its good things and its bad things. And I think Aquarius Cup maintains the good things and improves upon the bad things. So let's begin. The Capricorn Cup has had two sorts of thoughts, two sorts of people, really, and how they feel. And both are completely valid. So if you feel either way on this matter, it's perfectly fine. If you enjoyed this CM, it's most likely because it was pretty easy to build. You didn't really spend much time trying to min-max, and really, you found this was quite the departure from normal champions meetings because it didn't really have a very high barrier to entry. If you disliked Capricorn Cup, I would challenge that you actually legitimately disliked it and say perhaps you just got a little bit more fatigued than normal because you were really able to min-max more than any other CM because the barrier to entry was so low. Because it was such a short CM with some unique disadvantages to the track and a very small UMA pool to really pull from, you were really having to make hard decisions that would change the entire course of your final UMA that either you didn't realize and notice later, which was frustrating, or even when you thought you had a good UMA, it just wasn't good enough because of what other people are min-maxing as well. In addition, because stamina was completely useless, you had an entire stat and two trainings, stamina and power, that were pretty hard to proc and didn't just feel good. You couldn't use the cards that you really liked, that you pulled for at least, like Rico. And so you were kind of stuck trying to form a brand new meta. And this was very tiring. You pretty much had to make a full new set of parents as well. So this Capricorn Cup, no matter how you feel, both are valid. But today I'd like to go over what's there to like with Aquarius Cup, which will be the Dirt CM. It's a mile track, and if you enjoyed the Capricorn Cup sprint track, there's a lot to like about this mile track. In essence, all this is, besides the departure from turf into sprint, is essentially this track is exactly the same in terms of style, except for there's an additional 200 meters at the start of the race, an additional 200 meters in the mid-race, split between the mid-race and the end race. So this means pretty much everything that you've built and have learned from the sprint track is applicable for this mile track. It's all the corner skills work just the same. All the straight skills work just the same. There's a few key differences that are improvements though. For those that disliked the Chukyo 1200 sprint course or are just simply tired of it, the Aquarius Cup's going to offer a few more things. So the first of all is this is a Dirt CM, so if you are a Haru Urara fan or a Smart Falcon fan, these are the times that you really should build your Oshi because you will not have to force them. That is a small subset of people, but it is an improvement because this is the time where you can at least make your characters viable and playable without having to really go and farm for parents. Secondly is that stamina is required, and this has a couple of different things that it changes. As I said, we can use Rico now. I did a whole video on this, but the possibility of using a PAL card that actually supports the game style and doesn't give useless stats basically means that all of our other SSR cards will give us their skills more often than not. In addition, using a PAL card, of course, gives the standard things of, protection from your mood downs, as well as just general consistency as you're getting the stats from events rather than having to hope that things go on different various trainings. So because we can use Rico, it's going to feel immensely better because we're not going to be missing Pro Curve as often. In addition, because stamina is not useless, as you recall, power training does give stamina, and in essence, stamina training gives guts. And so not only is stamina training not going to feel completely bad to press, but power training is also going to feel better because the stamina you gain from power is going to be useful in hitting what is going to be a 601 threshold. This also allows for basically your power cards and the ability to use a singular stamina card to not be completely worthless as well. So if you have like a Super Creek or a Rice Shower that you pulled for, it's not completely useless this CM, because the power cards that you wanted were basically only there for their race bonus or their skills. So you're able to use more of your deck that you have spent your time and carrots into, and able to formulate more strategies. There's just so many different ways to play this Mile CM as compared to the Sprint CM. In addition, there's a few track differences that are very minor but very key. First of all, the biggest one is that the spurt is actually set slightly before the straightaway. So this is still a straightaway track. You can still run straightaway spurt. You can still run Victoria Por Plancha, give Mummy a hug. Stuff that procs on final straight will work. But in addition, this allows for different characters to actually be able to be used in both parenting and themselves. So essentially, angling and scheming, as well as Let's Pump Some Iron in particular, are two very easily acquirable acceleration skills that will work this time that will not work in the Sprint CM. In addition, the downhill actually doesn't extend far into the late race. On the Chukio track, one of the biggest hidden or invisible frustrations on this track is that it is completely downhill through the entirety of the min race. The downhill actually ends about 100 to 200 meters into the mid race. And Uma's actually going to what's called downhill mode based on their wit percentage, but once they're in it, it's a flat percentage to leave, so which is just pure flat RNG that you cannot change. This means that pace chasers sometimes, if they roll well, if they're in downhill mode the entirety of the mid-race, they can very easily surpass front runners. There's going to be more respect given to the different rolls because the position keep, there's only going to be about 100 meters of downhill to get into that downhill mode. And the rest of the race is going to be basically just your Uma's base wit. So the front runners are going to be able to hold their position better. The late surgers and the end closers who actually give wit are actually going to see the benefit over characters who just get lucky with the downhill rolls. Downhill is something you can't really affect too much once you're in it. You can affect the chance to go in it, but you can't affect the chance of leaving it, which means that wit actually becomes, surprisingly enough, maybe I do a video on this later, less useful when there's a large downhill in terms of actual speed gained. It gives consistency, it doesn't give results, if that makes sense. As a final note, as I just noticed, the uphill is actually closer as well to the actual spurt, which means Highlander in particular as well is also another option that will be less gambly, or it won't be less gambly, sorry, but it'll have a higher upside than normal. If you notice, the flattening happens roughly at the same point. So it goes back to flat, so the proc happens anywhere in this round, but it will be overall a higher upside skill with the same amount of downside. So we do like a little more gambling. We do like better acceleration options other than the ones that we've seen. And so this essentially, again, gives us more options. The third thing is this character, El Condor Pasa. El Condor Pasa has been an absolute menace in the Sprint CM. You've probably seen it. She gets in second place. She wins. There's two reasons why this is a improvement over the fact that El Condor Pasa is probably the best Uma to build in the sprint track, and she's still very good in this track, but there's going to be an increase in front runner play. There's going to be the Valentine Bourbon release. She's not a dirt track runner. You can force her, but she's not a dirt track runner. However, whenever there's a character that's released for a certain style, generally interest in that role increases. So we're going to have more people running fronts. In addition, fronts are better in the CM a little bit. They hold their position in the mid-race, as I said. There's less downhill for ECPs to actually go forward past the front runners, which means that you're able to actually deny El Condor Pasa's ultimate Victoria Por Plancha and anyone who inherits Victoria Por Plancha. However, because of the long final straight, if you look here, the straight happens at 533 over instead of 400, right? The spurt is longer, which means that front runners with their lower spurt speed will actually be slightly worse and a little bit easier to overtake traditionally. like normal, like how gamblers do it normally, where they sit in the back and then they try to push through in the late race after they get their acceleration and their higher spurt speed. So we're returning to more of a traditional form rather than the current form, which is you try to roll high on wit, get past the front runners, and then you're neck and neck with the front runners, but you have a higher spurt speed, so if you hit your accelerations, you win. We're going back to the traditional method of, hey, if you're close to the front runners, you can still win the race pretty easily. Okay, so fronts are good. They're probably a little better than last CM, but they're not unbeatable. Finally, the track differences, because this is both a corner track and a straight track, means that VPP isn't really like one of two acceleration options, so that every single pace chaser has to have Victoria por plancha. There's various options. Doto Ultimate's very good on pace chasers. Gamblers have less pumps of iron. Frontrunners have angling and scheming. You can get VPP. It's a very good addition to it, but it's not the be-all, end-all, and absolutely required. So whatever parents you have, you can run the good parents, or you can find more borrows than just trying to find a random sprint El Condorpasa that doesn't have any stats for you. So really, those are the things to look forward to in the Aquarius Cup. There's much to like. If you liked the Sprint CM, which again, I did enjoy the Sprint CM, I just got a little bit tired. Pretty much everything from the Sprint CM, except for the parent Pink Sparks, right, is going to transfer over to the Dirt CM. You do have to make your Dirt parents. That's going to be a whole slew of challenges for you to figure out. But I think this process is going to be more fun than the Sprint CM, because when you finally get those UMAs that actually meet the requirements, you're going to find that this is much less chaotic than the Sprint CM, and you're going to feel like you have accomplished something. The Sprint CM, it just feels like you're gathering more dice to give yourself a little bit better chance of winning the race. There's still going to be enough RNG for people who are just getting into this game to still win, right, occasionally, and there's going to be enough consistency that people who actually spend the time to make good UMAs and get lucky enough will reap their rewards. Like I said, the floor is nearly the same as Capricorn. It is just as easy to get into this CM as the previous or the current CM, Capricorn Cup. The only difference is you need 600 stamina. It's almost as if you were kind of playing and now you are playing the medium mode. This is the next step. You have some stamina you have to consider. There are many more options to play, not necessarily in characters. There's different characters, but there's a lot of things that you can do to make your characters unique. Again, I highly suggest running the anti-frustration plan that I've set out. This part of the anti-frustration plan that is relevant for this CM is, hey, Sprint CM is difficult. It is very difficult to min-max. So if you're feeling burnt out at any point in time, just stop trying to min-max Capricorn. You're probably fine. It's a lot of RNG. You'll probably be able to get to A finals if you have somewhat decent UMAs. If you built, let's say, a Bakashin. My personal suggestion is that the last day, the hardline date that you should say is your last day no matter what, should be at the latest the 2/9 registration, the February 9th registration, which is the registration period for Capricorn Cup. Don't try to min-max stuff 3 days before, 2 days before the actual CM. Roll with what you got and work towards the next one. There's a lot of parent building to do. I'll go over a method to do it that's not completely mind-numbing. On 2/9, we're going to release the Capricorn overview, the Royal I am, rather. And then from there, probably the different role guides. So look forward to that. I may be able to get another freeform video. If anyone has any requests, let me know. Otherwise, good luck in the final days to making some good UMAs, and perhaps good luck on pulls if you're deciding to pull on any of the current banners. Thanks for watching. Burb out.